Alright, I might just get quickly started a little bit so I can read off some announcements. But Charis will be joining in like literally 1 attosecond. So let me just get stuff set up. Speeding at sea, it's me Z. Oh shoot, my voice is like really out today. I hope everyone is doing great. For those of you who were here last night, yeah, no, this is my like second stream in like a bit in like 24 hours, so my voice is a little bit dead, but we're gonna try to make it work. Maybe the music is a little low. I'm just gonna quickly do attendance. Hello, Eggy. Yes, I've been doing 2 streams. Isn't that crazy? Hello, Cody. Hello, Astaris. Hello, Alex. Hello, Arky. Hello, Stella. Hello, Transmission. Hello, APA. Hello, Germanium. Oh, so glad to be able to see you live. Hello, Ilgus. Hello, Not Why. Hello. I hope everyone is doing great. I just wanted to quickly say, tomorrow at 10 a.m. PST, I'm going to be on Tiny Toxic Tofu's, Tofu Tech Talk. She has interviewed other, science communicator streamers before, including my, V-Theorem friend, Syzygy, who I'll also put into the chat for those of you guys who are not following every single V-Theorem member, because why aren't you? And yeah, we're going to be talking about physics because she too is a physics educator. Hi Matt, great to see you. But yeah, I hope everyone's doing great. I think Eggy asks, Charis, what is your favorite food? I'm actually curious what everyone's favorite food is. Yeah, just gonna type to Charis. Okay, great. Alright. Charis, can you hear me? Let me bring you up on my screen as well. Hello? Testing? Oh, I think, you are muted, or you have this, like, headphone icon on Discord. Or maybe he's talking with chat. I'm not too sure. Let me just mute myself on this end for now. Let me just read through chat. Breakfast is my favorite. Oh, I actually can't eat breakfast. Maybe this is a very hot take. But I get kind of nauseous when I eat breakfast. What is your favorite breakfast food? Maybe I just haven't had like very good breakfast food. Maybe that's the case.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute on
Oh,
my call. I'm so sorry.
Hi,
Hello,
no
Z, you're
worries.
live.
Hi. Well, we were just talking about our favorite breakfast food. I was wondering, do you have a favorite food?
I usually go for cereals because I'm lazy.
Ooh, do you have a favorite cereal?
I think I really liked Frosties. And then the whole... Was it the Frosty... Frosties is the one with the tiger, right?
Yeah, Frosty's Flakes or something?
You heard about the VTubing thing that happened with, like, the mascot?
The mascot became a VTuber?
Yeah, there was a whole thing.
What?
It was... And then they had, like, a voice actor to do, like, the bit with the tiger, and, like, he went on stream, and then they had, like, a gaming tournament or something on Twitch. It was the whole thing. And then they did one stream and stopped, I think, is what happened. I think, like, the actor got really uncomfortable with, like, the chatters and what they were saying about, like, the mascot. It was really fun.
That is wild. I didn't even know, like, that was even a thing. But, yeah, I guess cereal is pretty good. I really like the almond, what are they called? Like, almond oats? Like, they have, like, granola bits, and it's, like, almonds.
Granola bits.
Wait, almond cereal. I need to... Oh, honey bunches of oats with almonds.
Oh.
But I'm also not big on cereal. Yeah, I regret eating cereal after eating it. Yeah.
Why? What's wrong with cereal?
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I also am, like, lactose intolerant, so I can't drink it with milk, so I drink it with, like, eat it with, like, soy milk or oat milk or something, and it's a lot of milk, I think.
I see. Because I'm also, like, I'm, like, slightly intolerant. So I just have like almond milk with it.
Ooh.
And it works. It works.
Maybe I need to try that.
Anyways.
But yeah.
If I'm feeling effortful, I'll scramble an egg maybe. That's what I'll do. I love eggs. That's probably my favorite food.
Eggs are great. Yeah, I love omelets. A good eggs Benedict always hits so hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. Yes. Would you like to begin?
Yeah. Let's quickly introduce ourselves. Maybe. Charis, do you want to go first?
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I guess yeah. So since this was my invitation, I should probably go first. It would only be courteous. Hi, I am Charis Euphranor, and yes, that is how you pronounce it. Is it the most correct way to pronounce it? Maybe. So Charis, you say Charis with like a hard like K sound. Euphranor is debatably pronounced Euphranor if you're going by the Greek, but you can just say Euphranor because it makes more sense. I am the first and last philosopher VTuber, the last librarian of Alexandria. First and last, by the way, not necessarily implying that the only one, because, well, for reasons that will be explained much later in my lore, that is not quite what that means. But for now, just know that I kind of like philosophy. I kind of like talking about philosophy. I have a background in it, but the secret is I'm actually terrible at it. And today I am joined by...
Yeah.
Who am I joined by?
Hi. Speeding at Sea, it's me, Z. My name is Syzygy Altair, just call me Z for short. I am a physics, astrophysics, maybe even like coding, aerospace, just basically all of STEM TBH now. But mostly astrophysics, VTuber. I do galaxy astrophysics research during the day, and during the night, I am a VTuber. Although, I guess in this case, it's actually morning for me, so I'm a VTuber during the morning and the night. It's so great to... Wait, Charis, does your community have,
Yes.
like, a name?
Does my community have a name? We came up with this a while ago and I forgot. It is Euphranor. That's the name.
Wait, Euphranors?
Euphranor, like paranoia.
Oh, Euphranor. That's cute. Euphranor.
That is the name, yes.
Well, it's great to meet all of the Euphranor, and all the Orbies should say hi to Charis too. I actually pinned his POV in my YouTube chat, so if you want to switch off between the two, that link is available for you too.
Great, wonderful. Hello, Orbies, welcome. I've been around a little bit. You might have seen my name sometimes on occasion in like a stream somewhere where I'd say something uninteresting and nonsensical, but it's great to finally be talking to you, Z.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad we made this work. Actually, the funny story was that we were chatting about collabing, and you know, with my hiatus coming up, I was like, oh, we could maybe do something in October. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just do it this Saturday. And Charis was like sweet enough to be like, yeah, sure, to my crazy schedule. So thank you for making this happen.
It's okay. I too, I can relate very much to deciding when a stream happens, like 10 minutes before it does. So like
Yeah.
So I could certainly relate. No, but thank you so much for I guess willing to being willing to do this with me. I am going to introduce you to the format of today's show thing, if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
So this is Better Question Wins. Now, for those of you who may watched the last episode I did on that was with Phi, who is someone else that the Orbies may be familiar with. Am I correct?
Yes. Phi is also in VTheorem, which is the group that I'm part of.
Yes. So we did an episode of Better Question Wins, in which case, where the format was kind of like it was sort of like a mutual interview where we asked each other questions. There's a bit of a competitive element to it where the premise is, the better question wins, but really it kind of boils down to what the idea is. We're supposed to spiral in implicitly, not explicitly, not through like spoken text, but internally in our minds, we're supposed to kind of get into a headspace of like, well, what constitutes a good question in the first place? And getting so lost in it that we forget the competition in the first place. And so in lieu of that, we have prepared each other some questions, some from viewers, some from us, some questions, some discussion topics, but really it's just an excuse to come together and nerd out about stuff.
Yeah, I am super stoked. And yeah, I guess we will be chatting about a lot of different things, hopefully. And I'm very excited to do that.
Would you like to start us off, Z, or do you want me to start off with?
How about you start us
question,
off
do you think?
so I can get the hang of it?
Okay. I'm gonna start off with a question. Not so much about physics, but about you, I think.
Okay.
You presented at a conference. Is that right? With V theorem.
Well, to be fair,
Is that what that was?
I've presented at many conferences, not
Sorry,
as Z though.
as in like, yeah, Z has presented in a conference as like a VTuber.
Yeah, so so the original plan actually for this conference, so VTheorem is the group that I'm part of. We're a group of scientific educators, and Side Array was going to this psychology conference and was presenting about, you know, how to make scientific communication more accessible in the form of like a VTuber avatar. So she actually presented for our behalf, but all of the VTheorem members submitted like recordings of different slides. I did a recording explaining you know, I did a live demo once with doing soldering on stream and trying to show that like you can have hands-on demos and that kind of stuff. So that was really exciting, and I think it kind of comes to show that like, I mean, it's kind of cool, but VTubing
It's very cool.
can be a medium of scientific communication, which is really exciting. Yeah, I'm becoming too powerful. Before you know it, there'll be VTubers in conferences.
Would you, Orbeez, would you like to attend? And I suppose the Euphranor as well, whatever. I don't really care about you guys, but would you be more likely to attend a lecture if it was a VTuber presenting? Probably, right? It would at least pique my interest.
I think it would be more, like, interesting, especially if it's like a scientific conference. Oh. Sorry, my
Sorry, I
OBS
was no.
Yeah,
Are you all right? You're right. Okay.
yeah.
Anyways, yes. So that was kind of like the opening question. I really wanted to know because that's really interesting to me because I've always been thinking about how like how VTubers can educate, but not like, and how that's different from like, you know, I suppose the traditional classroom learning, a lecture hall kind of thing. Like it can still take the form of that, but there's something about the VTuber.
Yeah.
The VTuber itself that fundamentally shifts, you know, what's going on in this transmission of information, but potentially also something more than that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
It's really cool. I just wanted to say that's so cool.
yeah, it is so cool. The Orbeez seem to be like, yeah, it's interesting. Like I think it's gonna be different though. If between like, you know, presenting as your VTuber avatar or model or whatever versus presenting in a human form, knowing that this person is a VTuber. Professor Z, yeah, no, maybe that would be a possibility. Who knows? VTuber
Do you think
University.
you would, if you were to Z? Do you think if you were to give a or like a lecture or like, you know, present at a conference or something, what would be the, and again, please, you know, don't give any personal information. That I'm sort of trying to beg at a more like maybe philosophical is the bad word because that could mean many things and it's very nebulous right now. But like, do you see a difference between you, the person, and Z, the VTuber?
Oh, yeah, I've actually gotten this question quite a few times. And after I answer, I'm actually curious to hear your take too.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, for instance, I met with my genmate Mylan in real life. So they are one of the few people who have, you know, the number of people in real life who know that I am a streamer can be countable on one hand. So I don't have a good sample size. But, you know, when I met Mylan and Mylan, you know, saw me out like in real life, they were saying that like my personality as a VTuber and my personality as a person is the same. Which is like very like high energy. But I have to admit that like sometimes when I'm in VTuber mode versus when I'm in real life, I do feel like I kind of have like a split identity. I feel like I'm like Spider-Man and I'm like living this like
Yeah.
secret life as a VTuber, just because the work that I do day to day is, you know, very detached from like being like a streamer and being like almost like a public figure in this sense. Well, I guess not too detached, but yeah,
It's cool. I love
yeah.
the Spider-Man analogy.
Yeah.
That helps me make sense of it as well.
Yeah, how do you feel, Karis, actually?
I kind of I got into specifically VTubing because I wanted to explore this, because I really wanted to like get a feel for what does that mean? Like what am I, like what does it mean to embody, like am I acting? Is this character acting? Am I putting on a front? Am I kind of like going on stream and being a version of myself that's different, akin to maybe the way I greet my uh elderly neighbors, you know, where I put on a bit more of a nicer, friendlier voice, and then I speak maybe with a bit more clarity as opposed to my usual ramblings, right? Like what is that difference? Because there sort of is a difference, but I'm trying to make sense of it right now. So I guess my like for now answer, because it's a work in progress, right? But for my for now answer is I'm when I stream as Charis Euphranor, I am pretending to be myself.
This is like
Which
oddly.
doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I think I get what you mean though. Do you ever have dreams about VTubing?
I have yet to ever have a dream about VTubing. I've had
Really?
dreams about streaming, but I've never had like a dream where it's like, oh, I am now like, you know, I look much more conventionally attractive. For example, I've never like had that, which is weird. I don't know.
That's
Have
interesting.
you?
Yeah, I've had a lot of dreams about VTubing. Actually a lot of nightmares, which is really odd.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Do you mind getting
yeah, I
into
can
what makes it kind of scary?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just chatted about this like last night too. I had a dream where I was like reading like I like to read papers on stream, and I accidentally
Yeah.
pulled up my like one of my papers, and like I had to
Oh.
pretend like I wasn't reading my paper, and then there was somebody, one of the Orbeez in chat was like, "Oh, I googled this author, and she like oddly sounds like Z." Like, that's so weird. And I was like
Oh
trying to
my
play it
god.
normal. I've also gotten dreams where like, you know, after I give like a talk IRL, like somebody comes up to me is like, "Oh my god, you're a VTuber," and like says it like really loudly, and there's like other people in the room that are like, what is a VTuber? Like, what
Yeah.
is that? So yeah, I mean, oh, to be fair, pulling out my own paper on a stream would be very like would be a flex. But I mean, I don't know. I sometimes get dreams like that. I'm surprised you haven't dreamt of
Oh.
something like that yet.
I've dreamt of like meeting someone who I've dreamt of meeting someone who didn't know me beforehand, but then knew me as Charis Euphranor, and then they were talking to me as if I was Charis Euphranor, but then it was almost like the exchange, the interaction. I don't, because it's like it's a dream, right? So it was kind of fuzzy, but it was like I remember I wasn't. It was only after the fact. It was only after I woke up that I realized it was a nightmare. If that makes sense. Like when I was dreaming it, it felt like I was just going through like a scene. Like it felt like so. What had happened was like this person had initiated a conversation with me and addressed me as like Charis Euphranor, and then asked me some things, and I think I responded to them, like maybe in character is not the right word, but that's what I did. And then the whole that was the interaction. It wasn't really loud. It wasn't, you know, really dramatic. And then it ended, and then I went off and I did something else in the dream. And then I woke up, and then it only occurred to me then the magnitude of what I had dreamt, which is really weird. I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of indicative though that you still at heart identify as VTuber. Like, if somebody called you Karis, like in real life, like would you turn your head? Because I feel like that I think is like a metric for how aligned I am as my VTuber identity.
I think I've been able to. I've been very consciously thinking about that specifically, and like being exposed in my IRL identity or whatever. So much so that in my head I've done the mental fortitude where like I would not respond to someone calling me Charis in real life. Ever.
Really?
And inversely, if anyone called me, don't. But if anyone, not like you, sorry, I turned, I'm sorry, that wasn't obvious, but I turned to look at my audience. I turned to look at my viewers for a second. But I was like, when I said don't, but I was like, don't do that. But if
Yeah.
I were to be called my real name, I wouldn't even respond to it when I'm streaming. And it's
Oh,
like
that's
I've been able to
crazy.
just have a complete mental separation when I'm like, yeah, when I'm in streaming mode and when I'm not in streaming mode. I don't know though, but like I don't feel any less authentic or genuine when I'm presenting this part of me, like right now, to you and to the Orbeez, right? I don't know.
That's crazy. I've had a few instances where, you know, some of the Orbeez would be subscribe and they would have like the same name as somebody I know in real life. And it would be like kind of
Yeah.
weird, like, oh, thank you. And I'd read the name and like, thank you, blah, for subscribing. And then I'd be like, oh my
Yeah.
God, like that name is
I
like,
know this person.
Yeah, but like it's obviously like not them, but like, yeah.
Yeah. Like the name, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
God, that's so interesting. We could ramble on about like the identity crisis of a VTuber all day, but there are other questions I'd like to ask you.
Yeah.
Would you like to throw me a question back, actually? Now that we're
Actually, we
on this rhythm.
got some questions from the Orbeez, and I guess some of these are very like technical, but I think there was one question in general about like let's see. I did want to ask you, do you have opinions about like philosophers versus physics and sort of how we teach people to think like a philosopher or teach people to think like a physicist?
Like you mean in like sort of like an educational sense when we train people to be scientists or physicists?
Yeah,
And,
I was
like,
wondering if you
whereas
had
when
a
we train
take on
people-
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mean like kind of like the difference in what I've kind of observed?
Yeah, sure. Or any thoughts that you've had.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to like grab onto the question, as it were. The way a physicist is trained, as I imagine, and I'm speaking on no authority. Really, you should be speaking on this with more authority than me. But the way a physicist is trained, from what I imagine, is one is a way in which you are almost put into a mindset of very quickly identifying what is falsifiable and what isn't, and what can be experimented on, like what we can find out and what we can't find out, right? And then, or what is irrelevant to like any sort of experimentation, as it were. And so there, when I talk to, for example, some of my engineering friends and my physicist friends, they're very lasered in on when there's a problem to be discussed, right? They're very lasered in on, shall I say, like a practical, like experimental aspect. Like, okay, like for example, if there is any way to make a comparison between two things, one of my physicist friends will be like, oh, then we can just try it. Let's just try it, and then let's record the results, and then let's see what the difference is. Let's isolate the variables. Let's make sure, we're testing for the same thing. Whereas when I do, and this is like just my perspective as someone who was philosophically trained, not very well, but nonetheless trained, I tend to gravitate more towards what if scenarios, where it's like, okay, what if the answer were this, or if this were the result, then what happens? If it's not that, then what happens? And like, how do we, like, once I figure out all the possible like consequences, then I can kind of look at the question and go, well, it doesn't matter if we go to this restaurant or this restaurant. We're gonna end up having a good night, and then we're gonna go to a bar anyway. So we don't have this experimentation is unnecessary. I say boldly to my STEM friends who proceed to insult me back. But I would suppose that that's kind of the way I see the difference. Would you say that you agree, or that makes sense?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. was sort of thinking about the ways that you could best teach people to think like a physicist. And I think what you were getting at is that currently, well, maybe just in general, physicists like to approach problems with like a very objective lens, and start like immediately putting on the scientific method. Like, oh, like what data can we get from this? How do we parse this data? How do we evaluate this data? And I think there is some overlap because physics kind of deals with the limits of knowledge sort of in the same way that philosophy does. Would you agree with that?
I would say that I was prepared to make this analogy actually for later because you've kind of I've kind of seen the some of the audience questions which tied into a question I had for you actually, and I'll bust the analogy out now, okay? But the analogy is, I think what's happening when we talk about certain things, like for example the limits of knowledge in the field of philosophy versus in the field of physics, what we're doing is we occupy in different spaces. We're standing in different spaces, and we're pointing towards the same thing.
Yes.
And so if you imagine like the motion of like me lifting up my finger and like kind of pointing at like, I don't know, the sun or something up there, and I'm gesturing towards a thing, and you are doing the same. The directions have to be different from where we're pointing because we start from different positions. And if but there's something that like that kind of cross line, like you can imagine like a laser almost shooting out of it.
Yeah.
That point of intersection, we're trying to move that point of intersection as close to the object we're trying to gesture towards as much as possible. And sorry, so that's a really roundabout way to say that I think, yes, we are talking about the same things, but it's so weird how difficult it is to talk between disciplines, even though we're talking about the same things. And I suspect that it's because of something like this.
Yeah, actually, this reminds me, this like sort of difference actually sort of reminds me of this question that I saw in chat by Cody Boy, which is like, what do you think is the difference between how a philosopher is trained and a physicist is trained? And I think that was sort of what you were getting at with like the whole pointing analogy, in that maybe we're trying to answer very similar questions at the limits of knowledge and sort of confronting like what is real, what is infinity, reshaping human perspective, all of those things. But I don't know, do you think there's a difference in sort of how philosophers are taught to think about these questions and how physicists are?
I think there's the intuitive, instinctive answer. Sorry, I realize that that's like, I see now that you're repositioning the question in a way that helps me like kind of give a better answer. But what I will say is, from what I understand, the knee-jerk reaction is to suggest that the scientific approach to thinking about something is more objective, right? It is grounded in experimentation. It's grounded in hypotheses. It's grounded in the scientific method. And I think that you would not be wrong necessarily, or too wrong, although there might be a bit of missing nuance, but you wouldn't be too wrong in saying that. Like, it's more objective, whereas philosophy seems to be less grounded in this method and this discipline. I saw someone in your chat mention this. I think it's good to bring it up. Where once upon a time, few hundred years ago, I'm not a history major, so I don't remember when exactly, but a few hundred years ago, we called science like the philosophy of nature, like natural philosophers. And scientists were not called scientists until like recently. They were called like natural philosophers before that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Newton was actually first called a natural philosopher. So I think it's only in recent times that philosophy and sort of science, or philosophy and maybe specifically physics, have sort of been identified as different fields.
And so I think to kind of to continue from that, right? So I think ultimately the biggest difference is those who are raised and taught through this to be trained to be a physicist or like a scientist. I like to think scientists because I'm not very acquainted with the science, but physics, at least for physics, right? I feel as though someone who is trained in that would be more, they're much more adept at utilizing the scientific method, which sounds simple, but is really complex, as with, you know, most things, right? Like the deeper you kind of dive into something, the more difficult it becomes. Whereas philosophy majors, people who are trained to engage in philosophy, like philosophically, are less detached to any, say, to that particular method of information gathering, or of like, there's a whole field that studies that called epistemology in philosophy. If you are interested at all at like thinking about, okay, well, how do we know stuff? You know, how do we test things? And I get the sense that some of the questions that the Orbis have thrown at me are kind of really good, deeply ingrained questions in epistemology. I would say that's the starting point. That's where you would look in philosophy. But in philosophy itself, it's less that and more the rigor of the argument and the demonstration of the logical points you're trying to make from premise to conclusion.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I've thought of one way to sorry, continue.
oh, first of all, thanks, yeah, whatever, for subscribing. And second of all, the announcement popped up while you were talking. And yeah, Cody in chat is saying, like, the first book, like the Principia Mathematica, was apparently originally titled Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. So I think, like, the philosophy physics thing being intertwined is really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think that the separation is also really hard for me to articulate right now in the stream, because there's like, it depends on like what the time period is as well, right? Are you asking for the difference between philosophy and science now in like contemporary academia versus philosophy and science 100 years ago, 200 years ago, many hundreds of years ago? The perspective, it's changed and shifted over time. And you maybe, like, if you're a philosopher and you want to be all like hoity-toity, you can say, well, the science came from us, you know, we were the ones who were thinking about these problems first, and then there were a bunch of people who called themselves scientists who branched out from us, but they should not forget that they came from philosophy. You know, like, you could do that, but I don't think that's
Yeah,
very conducive to discussion here. It just occurred to me, maybe one other way to explain the distinction between like the mindset of a philosopher and a physicist going into like dealing with problems, I guess, in particular, right? Is, for example, if you have Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's going up on a stage and he's talking about black holes, he's or something cosmological, and he goes, this we have found leads to our conclusions, where we have found out that the Earth does a certain thing when, you know, the gravitational pull of the moon is a specific way, right? Like, when Neil deGrasse Tyson does that, the audience is not expected to think, oh really? Or rather, in a way, you're kind of supposed to believe Neil when he says that, because he's gonna cite the data center, or, you know, the lab or the institution that had kind of come to these research findings. And if you want to like know more, you kind of look into those research findings. Whereas philosophy doesn't really have that, or it's really hard to do that. You can't just go like, okay, the conclusion is we should never pull the lever on the trolley problem, right? You can't just go like, oh, I'll take your word for it, I guess. You know, you did the work back in the lab over there. No, you have to interrogate this guy right now to make sure he's not, you know, making anything up. Or not making anything up, rather. That's a bad way to put it. To make sure he's not like insincerely presenting arguments or like opinions as arguments and fact.
That's an amazing point, because one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is, well, I mean, outside of streaming, just in general, is how can we best teach people to think like a physicist? And I think what you just addressed also sort of mentions what I think is a problem in physics education, which is that, like you said, when Neil deGrasse Tyson says something and cites some crazy institution, no one's going to question that because it's an objective fact. Whereas something for the trolley problem, there's no clear answer because it is relatively subjective. It has to do with morals, maybe, or, your subjective opinion on the trolley problem, or whoever, if you want to save your mom or your husband or whatever, right? So it's relatively subjective. But I think the fact that physics and philosophy have now become detached to each other is, like, as somebody in chat is saying, like, science should always be tested. That's sort of exactly what we need to bring back into physics education. Because I think when people first learn about physics, they're overwhelmed by math. They're overwhelmed by the objectiveness of it. Or they feel like, oh, I'm not good at physics because I can't do calculus. But I think you can train people to really interrogate, like, the beauty and symmetry of the universe, which can be more subjective. For instance, I don't know if you've heard of this idea called Noether's theorem before.
Can you briefly explain it to me and the audience?
Yeah.
Not me, because I totally have read it and I know what it is, but to the audience, to my audience who's very dumb and doesn't know anything about Noether's theorem.
Well, I mean, this theorem is not very well known unless you're in physics, so totally understandable. And also, if any of you guys have any questions about anything that we say, like, please feel free to put it in chat. I'm reading through chat, although I cannot be as responsive. But basically, the concept of Noether's theorem is, at its core, that if you notice symmetry in the universe, that must be inherently tied to some conservation law. It's a very beautiful theorem that sort of takes the crazy math of, like, conservation of energy, conservation of momentum, or Hamiltonians or whatever, and it kind of just takes it to something that is so central to the universe. And so I'd say that the way that physics education can be improved is by having people sort of testing science and sort of asking these kinds of deep questions about, reshaping human perspective, like what is real, all these kinds of things. I think the departure of philosophy from physics has made it harder for some people to access physics. So yeah, that's sort of what my take is from what you said. I'm not sure if you agree with that, but it's one of the things that I've been thinking about recently.
I think I agree. Yeah, definitely. I think from what my answer was earlier, I was more so trying to describe, like, how it's been divided, and whereas your answer is more like, or rather your answer centers more towards what you think we ought to do, which is that we should not be separating the physics from the philosophy, and we should be trying to think about it, all as this. Is it cross-disciplinary? Is it almost returning to its singular just pursuit of knowledge, as it were? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that, but I do think I agree that education right now for physics, and I think just in general for many other subjects, would benefit a lot if we tied philosophy back into it at least a little bit.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it's also bringing together, like, I think sometimes people joke about, like, humanities versus, like, science or something, and I just don't like that people are putting those against each other, because I think there are some people who can think better subjectively, and there's some people who can think better objectively, and I think the best way is to have a combination of both. It's like, you can't, I don't know if you've heard this idea, but some people are extroverts and some people are introverts, but they always say being an ambivert is, like, the best or something, right? I think it's sort of the same analogy. It's best to be in the middle ground where you can sort of access both spheres.
I'm naturally very skeptical. Sorry, just like as a side, I'm very naturally skeptical. Not naturally, but I'm very skeptical, I should say, due to my training perhaps, of, like, the whole, like, extrovert-introvert distinction as well. I'm really, like, I feel like I've got a bone to pick with it, but I don't have the scientific language to articulate why I don't like it.
Is it because it's puts people into two extremes and not, like, a spectra of, personalities?
I think it's something like that. I think I'm intuitively, like, my knee-jerk reaction is to push back against any attempt to put people into boxes, I suppose, and just categorize them and go, okay, you are this is you, or you are like this and therefore go this way, which, if taken to the extreme, is also gonna be just rambling nonsensical ramblings of a philosopher, but I'm trying not to. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
I have a question for you now that I don't think is too related to what we talked about before, but might relate to what we might get into later, particularly with some of the audience questions that I'd gotten from the Orbeez.
Yeah.
But I'm asking you
Okay.
because I think I want you to explain it to me. Does God play dice?
So what exactly do you mean by that? Like, I need like a follow-up question because this could devolve into like many different ways.
Yeah, it's like a yes. It seems as though it's like a simple, easy yes no answer, but then it's weird the way. So what I'm referring to is, of course, the sort of the famous quote from Einstein, when he is, I hope I've done enough research to at least talk about this with a physicist and not embarrass myself, but I think it is Einstein trying to explain how his frustration for how at his time quantum physics was not able to be fully determined, in the sense that like it felt as though at the smallest level, like for example with something like radioactive decay, like there is a degree of randomness or probabilistic the results are probabilistic. And that is infuriating because for most of physics you want things to be deterministic, right? You want it to be as close to that as possible. You want to know that if you put an apple on a ledge and you kick it off, that it will fall down at like 9.81, right? Like that's what you desire as a physicist. But this thing with quantum mechanics is so frustrating because it seems as though it's like an indecipherable mystery, and it's led to more developments since then. But I guess that's the backgrounding for the question I'm asking you.
Okay, so I think there's sort of two parts to how I'd answer this. And the second part, I think, sort of goes... I really want to talk about the anthropic principle, which is one of the questions that some of the Orbeez suggested. And so I think that would be actually a good segue into also answering that question. The question that I got from the Orbeez was, is the anthropic principle good science? And I think it sort of plays into this idea. Let's go gambling. Exactly. So you said that, like, quantum physics at its core has to do with maybe rolling dice, right? For instance, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You could know the position of a particle, but you don't know its like momentum or vice versa exactly. But it's not all just random dice. It's not like a random number generator where you don't know what it's going to be. We understand the probability distributions of where particles might emerge. So in some ways, quantum physics can still be deterministic. We can model it with probability distributions. And yes, that won't tell us exactly where something is or how exactly something behaves. But it still is, at its core, like a very objective and a very deterministic equation. So that's sort of the first part of my answer. Quantum physics is probability, and we've gotten to a point where we can understand that probability. So it's like, yeah, maybe God plays dice, but we know what the nature of the dice is, and we know like what the probability of a certain number coming up will be.
I see. Yeah.
Quantum physics is very weird. That is for certain.
Yes, that it is.
And the second part of my answer maybe is a little bit more philosophical, so I'm actually curious to hear your take on this. There's this idea called the anthropic principle, which is sort of this concept that the reason why some of these physical laws or physical parameters we see in the universe are specific values or specific numbers or specific equations is because of some sort of survivorship bias. The only reason why we can see the universe around us is because we exist. So the conditions of the universe must have been such that intelligent life, and specifically us, could exist. So I wouldn't say that like God has like fine-tuned the universe, But there is, in some ways, the possibility that maybe the equations or the physical laws we see around us is because of survivorship bias. These same laws have allowed intelligent life to exist. And it's really interesting because, you know, many constants, like the cosmological constant, or even like the fusion energy to form like beryllium or something within the sun, sit in very, very narrow ranges that would have allowed chemistry, stars, and life to exist. So the anthropic principle is a philosophical concept. It can't rule out certain theories. It's not like a actual physical law. But it's interesting to think about in that the universe that we see and observe and measure around us has directly led to intelligent life being possible. So there must be some sort of bias in how God has fine-tuned the universe. I don't know. Maybe you have an opinion about this, Charis. I'm curious to hear what you think from a philosophy perspective.
This is going to be a really disappointing answer. Are you ready for a disappointing answer?
Yeah, sure.
I don't yet have an opinion on this because, funnily enough, right now, I'm doing it on my channel. I'm reading through Nick Bostrom's Superintelligence, which is a book where he discusses at length, you know, the concept of a super AI that kind of, like, and when it's possible or if it's possible at all, and why Bostrom argues is like it's an inevitability, really, and it's more so just we're predicting when it happens. He talks about intelligent life there, and Bostrom, I believe, was the person who coined the term the anthropic principle.
Oh,
is that correct? Did he coin it? I think he coined it, or if he didn't, at least he has a lot of things to say about it. But I think it came from him.
Interesting.
Yeah, or he wrote a book about it, at least, titled The Anthropic Bias. We're not reading that one. We're reading Superintelligence, which is like an AI themed book, if anyone's interested. But like there, he does touch on this anthropic principle, and like I'm still, because that's still fresh on my mind right now. I'm actually just trying to see what I think about it, because, and I can't give you like an educated, an educated answer for my conclusive thoughts on this. What I can tell you though is, intuitively, it makes a lot of sense to me. Intuitively, the fact that the universe exists in such a way that allows for, you know, observation, allows for science, allows for like all these things and intelligent life, seems to be super improbable in some sense. But I guess you do have to bear in mind that it is biased towards people who can make those observations, right? I'm essentially just restating the principle again. I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense for an explanation for, like, you know, I guess whether or not there is such a thing as a creator of the universe and such. It makes more sense than some of the other answers I've entertained in the past.
Yeah, I guess it also just goes into the idea of like how, this was another question one of the Orbeez suggested, how fine-tuned does the universe feel? Well, it must be fine-tuned enough for life to exist, right? So, and for us to observe it.
Right? But then, is it like fine-tuned? I suppose like the question really kind of centers around like, is there someone doing the fine-tuning, right? Is more like the philosophy bit of that. Am I interpreting that question correctly?
I see. I think like
or like, is there something fine? Not someone, but something, right?
Or we live in a simulation. Well,
simulation
this is
theory.
the kind of questions that I think about sometimes, because I've worked with like simulations and stuff, and sometimes it does feel like playing God. You can adjust the amount. Obviously our simulations can't, you know, zoom into like planet scales or something, but you can adjust. You know, you can turn up the explosion of stars like 4 times as much as what they usually are, which is very unphysical and is not what we see in the universe. But it does give me the thought that if it's possible to do that, and if a civilization is able to be incredibly complex and get to that kind of simulational power, maybe we do live in a simulation. But the one thing is that you can only simulate things that are less complex in the world that you live in, which means that if we are in a simulation, the beings or whatever that are simulating us must be like incredibly complex, beyond our understanding. But I don't know, that kind of goes into conspiracy theories, and I don't genuinely believe that we live in a simulation, but I don't know, I sometimes get questions about this.
Do you not at all? Are you not even like kind of maybe probabilistically thinking, there's a good chance we live in a simulation, no?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, it's just, here's my take. Sometimes I get questions about this, and at first I never knew how to respond to it because don't really know how to respond to these kinds of like theories. But at its core, this is, how I generally respond, which is we could be living in a simulation, but frankly, there's no way for us to test it. All of the things that we measure are just getting to understand the universe, and there's no way for us to potentially communicate, and we have never received communication from a being that may be simulating us. The fact that maybe the anthropic principle exists might be an indicator, but that is not a that's not a physical law. But
yeah,
I think whenever I get a question like this, I always make sure to add that it doesn't change anything. The fact that we're living in a simulation should not change your day-to-day life. If you think you're living in a simulation and you start, like behaving differently, like that's kind of how you behave.
I have a really...
Yeah.
Sorry, continue what you were saying.
Oh no, I maybe just like one last sentence, which is that knowing whether or not we live in a simulation or not does not change how we behave, and there's no way to test it. It's sort of the same idea of whether, or some people talk about, do we have free will or not? Well, frankly, that's a good, that's a possible question. We might not have free will. We may have free will, but at the end of the day, you still behave the same, and you should not change your behavior based off of whether we have free will or not. But I don't know. What's your take on this as a philosopher?
Well, the philosophers love arguing about this. They love talking about this. This is their favorite thing. I can tell you in general, I lean more towards your stance in that, like, at the end of the day, what matters most is how it impacts your, like, the decisions you make in your life. And so far from these arguments, it doesn't seem to weigh a lot. Like, I can get into this because this is actually really tied to one of the other questions the Orbeez asked me as well. But before I get into that, because I've got a book recommendation for that, or maybe not a recommendation.
Ooh.
But, I've got a starting point. It's a starting point that one might be able to dive into to help understand the problem at hand. But first, I want to ask you a question that seems unrelated.
Interesting.
Are you ready for the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you dreaming right now?
Is this like the Matrix? Wait, this is so funny.
That's another way to formulate that question, yeah.
Because last night I was chatting with the Orbeez, and for context, growing up I was a sleepwalker, and then now I've gotten to the point where I am still sleep talking. But one of the things that the Orbeez and I were chatting about was, what if like this whole time this YouTube channel was run by like a sleep talking Z? Yeah, well,
VTuber by night makes a lot of sense then, doesn't it? Because, that's when you're asleep.
Yeah. I'm actually curious. I will do a poll, because I'm actually curious.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that as well on my end. Let's see what the...
What the Euphranor and the Orbeez say. But,
yes.
Yeah, I'm literally this loading emoji. Like, I... Always dreaming. I am a believer in that. No. And if I am, it's a very real dream, and like,
it feels real, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're just a brain in a vat. No, I think, if we're dreaming or not, at the end of the day, you're still connecting with people. You're still growing as a person. Like, I guess this sort of ties into the argument that I was giving before, in that, like, nothing changes. If okay, yeah, maybe if some study comes out and it's like, oh, everybody's dreaming, we need to get out into the real world, like the Matrix, and I think people would freak out. But, life still goes on, and people still behave in ways because we feel that it's real. We feel that we're not dreaming. I don't know if that makes sense. What is your opinion on this, Charis?
It's a tough question. I threw you a really, it's a very almost unfair question, because no one is meant to have a good answer on this. This question is sometimes, and someone in your chat pointed out as well, the brain in a vat thing, right?
Yeah.
This question is the kind of precursor question to that. Like, how do you know, basically, that you're not dreaming? How do you know that you are not asleep right now when you're just imagining, or like you're dreaming the things that's happening in your life right now? And then you extrapolate it further. How do you know, and this is the Cartesian, so Descartes, René Descartes, like this is his meditations. He's the first to posit this question in this way, at least. How do you know that your brain is not in a vat, and there's no evil scientist or evil demon, I think is what he says, who's got like, wires plugged into the vat, into your brain, and like controlling and programming everything you think is going on in your life that is actually not the case at all. And you're just a brain in a jar, right?
Yeah, but I think there's no way to directly test that. I'm actually surprised because the poll seems to be 56% yes and 44% no. But I don't know if people are just doing that, to get us talking. But
yeah,
I mean, I can't be dreaming right now, because if I was, it would imply that I have a functional sleep cycle. Yeah, no, that's exactly how we test it.
And we know that can't happen.
Yeah.
Argument solved. No, but this is so the reason I ask you this is because this is actually like the philosophy 101. Like, this is the way we start to get people to think philosophically. No, I say we as if, like whatever, right? Like the way philosophers tend to do that is by positing this, actually, right at the beginning. The Cartesian meditations, the brain in a vat idea, the whole radical skepticism towards the world, that you realize, I don't know if the chair in front of me really exists, or the table in front of me, or my monitor, or my like phone screen. What can I know then? And Descartes kind of like, from this thought experiment, launches into his conclusion, which is the very now famous cogito ergo sum. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Whoa,
which
okay.
is just, I think, therefore I am.
Oh, wait, yes.
So no matter if the table in front of you is real, if you're dreaming right now, if you're watching two VTubers ramble on about things that make sense maybe 5% of the time, that all could be false. But what could never be false is that you exist. Because some kind of you has to exist in order to ask this question in the first place. In order to think, am I in a dream right now? There had to be someone doing the, am I in a dream right now? And therefore, you exist, and we can be certain of that.
Yeah. And
or I exist, maybe, if you want.
If you think of that statement in its most like objective form, it's sort of like, because you can think I think therefore I am, right? Like, I guess it sort of implies that you are, and that's it. That's the end of the road. There's really no like, it's not I think therefore I am a brain in a vat. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm taking this from I'm really glad we collabed, because I feel like I take a lot of things from a very objective standpoint. It's almost like, does free will exist or not? And I'm like, it doesn't matter, because I'm still going to be acting and behaving the way that I am. But I think our conversation has really been like testing the limits of like, how far can you take that statement?
It's really, I think you're coming from an angle that strikes me as, and I hope I'm not only saying this because I'm biased towards it, but like, it strikes me as a bit like existentialist, and like, you really want to ground your thought in the fact that, okay, but I do exist, and these things do happen around me in this world, and what matters isn't, whether or not there is, like, the objective truth is that there is a fine-tuner that exists that created the universe in this way or not. What matters more is that I do exist in this world now, and I have to behave in a way that makes sense to me, perhaps, or like, what is that exploration, that journey? That is kind of like the starting point for existentialism. And I want to say, although I'm not very good at articulating, the ins and outs of all of it, that that's probably the philosophical stance that I come from personally, is I'm a bit of an existentialist.
I see. Yeah, well, someone in chat is saying this, and I feel like existential crises are definitely kicking in right now.
That's good. That's good.
I think along those lines, somebody said, "Hello, Z and Charis. Just wanted to ask if either of you have heard of the shooter and farmer hypothesis. I read about it in a sci-fi novel. This is in Three Body Problem. Have you read that before, Charis?"
No, I should. All of my friends are telling me to read Three Body Problem.
It's so good.
Are you familiar with this?
Well, I had to Google it again because it's been several years since I read the book, but I can quickly explain what the idea is. The shooter hypothesis is this idea that, like, let's say there's a shooter and they create like evenly spaced holes in a wall. And if there are people who are like living on the wall observing these holes, they might conclude that the evenly spaced holes are like a fundamental law of their universe. Similarly, the farmer hypothesis is, let's say there's a farmer who is feeding their turkeys at the same time every single day. And the turkey who observes this pattern might formulate a theory about the regularity of food arrival. But it's sort of driven by the farmer. But on Thanksgiving, the farmer doesn't bring food and he just like kills the turkeys. So it's this idea that something that is perceived as regular could be very like abruptly broken. So it sort of challenges people to think about what is regularity, what is pattern recognition, frankly, which is central to physics and science in general, and how much can we trust pattern recognition and regularity in our universe?
So did you have a response to this, or did you want me to?
You can go first, because I will need to brainstorm a bit.
Yeah, so my kind of like, and again, I'm not super well read on this problem and like this line of thinking. I'm tempted to say that, yeah, we kind of just have to trust it. We gotta have to just trust stuff is regular until it's not. What I will say is that's one of the reasons why I'm super fascinated personally, right, by the Copernican turn, or really more broadly, like paradigm shifts that kind of really turn the way we understand something like almost upside down and require us to completely rethink how we do everything. And that's so, like, that would be what would happen if one day you as the turkey, if Thanksgiving Day arrives, you're gonna have to rethink everything anymore. There's no food regularly, et cetera, et cetera. The same with the shooter. So for me, it's like, I actually, funnily enough, probably am thinking about this more scientifically than I am philosophically, but I'm just kind of looking back in history and trying to really come to grips with that, when that happened, which is, the Copernican turn, when we realized the Earth revolves around the sun, or at least it's a much better way to conceptualize our universe than, the old, not heliocentric, because that's the new thing. I forget what the old thing is called. But that, right? And I, like, to me, I'm not as interested in answering, oh, then what if it does happen? What do we do? Because I don't think anyone could give a good answer. But what I can postulate on and maybe speculate on is, looking back in history, how would I have reacted if I was born right at the time when the Copernican turn was happening? Like, how would I have dealt with that in history? And I'm now extrapolating. It's almost like less of, a rigorous thought experiment, more just like a fun, like, imaginary exercise where, okay, well, then if something like that happened now, how would I change as a person? How would I do things different?
I think this also deals with like peer pressure and going against the norm, right? Because if you were, people got burned at the stake for thinking that the sun was at the center of the solar system.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you do if you were in that, like, let's say you had conclusive evidence that the sun was at the center of the solar system. Like, would you just keep it to yourself in fear of,
like, persecution?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. You have to give me your answer too after this, because I want to know what you would do. I think what I would do is I would try to be sneaky. I would try to maybe publish my findings under a pseudonym. You know, I think ultimately what I would do is probably like prioritize my own well-being in life, and maybe like my family and, you know, everyone who's immediately around me, and then slowly try to nudge this unpopular theory and go like, whoa, I don't know who wrote that, but I found this somewhere in the woods, this manuscript that contains really good proof for a heliocentric model of the universe. It's really weird, let's talk about it, but I didn't do it though, you know, like I would probably try to do that. So I might get burned at the stake anyways because of my bad acting, but that's probably what I would try to do.
you publish as a VTuber? That's the solution.
Yes, that's what I was trying to hint towards, yeah.
Someone in chat said, isn't this the plot of Orb on the movements of the Earth? I really want to watch that.
It is, and I need to watch it. Yes, me too. I need to watch it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is, I mean, obviously I don't talk about politics on my channel, but I do have to, I'm just going to quickly say that this is sort of reminiscent to a lot of the misinformation that I feel like is going around right now. And it's sort of, I don't want to, I try to stay away from politics on my channel. Just in general, which makes me also think that if I was in that position, I would, like, maybe I'd do something like you. I'd publish as a VTuber or, like, anonymously. Because I am a firm believer in that, like, people need to know the truth. Science is the face. I mean, people think science is the truth. And when the core values of science no longer are the truth, and people still believe it as the truth, that's when, like, serious problems emerge. So I think I would do the same as you. Though it's oddly a very timely question is sort of what I want to say.
It is, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. A lot of thinking about.
So good to know that both of us in another life would also still just be VTubers.
VTubers in like the 16th century.
I joke that like VTubing is just like it's advanced sock puppetry.
Yeah. It is. It's like high-tech sock puppetry.
And I love sock puppets. Like I love that bit of theater.
I mean, like, would you ever face reveal?
Would I ever do a face reveal? No. And I think the reason is there's obviously like kind of like existential personal things, but I actually have like a developing sort of philosophical approach for identity that, at least the way it is going for me right now, necessitates that I don't reveal my face, or if it happens to be known, I should still never acknowledge it, if that makes sense. Like if I one day get way too super famous, which is totally a realistic problem to think about. Trust me, I'm a philosopher, right? But if one day I get super famous and everybody knows me, like my IRL identity, I mean, and I'm going around the world, you know, on TV shows, and people eventually will probably recognize my voice because I don't really, like, this is just the way I talk.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, when that happens, even if it's like an open secret, I would still choose never to cross that boundary. I would still choose to always keep one thing separated from the other.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I actually collabed with Kim, who is an IRL astronomer, and she did a face reveal, and she streams sometimes as her VTuber model, and she streams sometimes as, you know, her IRL self. And in that case, her identities are like less detached from each other, and to the audience too, like they know her both as her purple-haired VTuber model and her IRL face and like outfits. But yeah, I mean, it brings up a good point. Like, I don't think I would ever do a face. No, I would never do a face reveal, but I am 100% certain that maybe in the future, and I think this has already happened, that people could recognize my voice. Actually, there's a joke that me and the Orbies have, which is that if you ever hear somebody who kind of sounds like me and you want to see if it's actually me, like, I would be happy to say hi to an Orbeez that I encounter in real life. And the way to test that is to ask if you are forklift certified. And like, that's like our secret code. So if someone comes up to me and is like, oh, are you forklift certified? Then I would know that they are an Orbeez.
Are they supposed to like start with that in the interaction? Like they walk up to you and straight up just go, hey, are you forklift certified? Or does it build in, is it baked in the conversation? Do you have to have like a drink at like a pub or like a bar and then kind of ease it in? Like, hey, by the way, are you forklift certified? You know, like just try to ease it in. Like, how does it work?
Well, I don't know. I think it would vary. I feel like, I ask everyone that though. Well, maybe, you know.
Yeah. Uh-oh. I hear you, but it's a little blurry, but I still hear you. Uh-oh. Intermission. Intermission. Intermission.
Okay, wait. All right, chat, can you hear us now? Chat, testing, testing.
I hear you. My chat hears you.
Okay, okay. Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. The simulation has broken. That's exactly what happened.
Uh-oh, they're getting us. They're out to get us.
They're out to get us. Yes,
We said
okay.
too much. We said too much.
We're good now. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so I had this kind of freaky encounter where I don't know if this was somebody who actually recognized me, but I introduced myself and I was just like chatting, and this person that I was talking with had such like a shocked look on their expression that I feel like I could have attributed only to the fact that they knew that I was a VTuber and they knew my channel.
Oh.
I mean, obviously they, you know, didn't say anything, or maybe I just looked shocking or something. I don't even know. I have
There's
no
something
clue.
in your teeth, maybe. There was.
Yeah, I was shocked.
Did you ask? You should have asked. You should have asked that person the secret code. You should have asked if they were.
No, this was
certified.
before the secret code existed. The secret code was like a month ago, like a few weeks ago. So now I have another method. So if somebody comes up to me looking like really horrified, I will be like, "Hey, are you with Riz, a forklift certified?"
Oh.
Yeah, maybe they just found me Rizzy. No. I have 0 Riz.
I would just say no. Like if anyone asked me if like, hey, are you Charis Euphranor? I would just go no.
That's
and if
crazy.
They, like, it's up to them. It's up to them to deal with my answer, and like maybe try to push me further, or like, you know, read the room and see if they want to back away, or maybe just ask me questions as my IRL person. That's all. Like, I want to put the responsibility on the person, because I want to see like how one would react to this, I guess.
You put it on them, so now it's their responsibility to deal with it.
I do that a lot. I put like a lot of stuff on my like chats and my mods. I just go like, I'm not doing that. Like, you do it. I'm not.
Are your mods supporting
care.
this?
My mods, I don't know. They are not usually very supportive of my endeavors in verbally, but no, there's a rapport. There's a rapport. But I am known for not dealing with things and doing them on time, or finding a way to justify being lazy, because I'm a philosopher and I'm really good at justifying what I do.
Maybe this is why your name is like Charis, right? Is charismatic. You have Riz, so you can switch it up.
Interesting. The name Charis was like is the Greek word for charity, or for the equivalent of charity.
Oh,
but I like that interpretation more.
I thought it was for charismatic.
It could be that too. There's no saying no to multiple interpretations. That's the beauty of names. It's the beauty of art, isn't it? Sorry, so we went a long way away from the question I was trying to get to from the Orbeez.
Oh yeah.
Would you mind if I got into that one now?
Yeah, which one?
So it would be, so this question was, what would the implications be if the holographic universe theory were to be true? From a philosophical and relativity / quantum theory POV. So my response to this, and I think we've touched on this earlier as well when, we got into the whole, are we dreaming? Is the universe simulated? Are we in the Matrix, et cetera, et cetera? I might recommend, and I'm a little hesitant to say it because I think I disagree with some things in the book, but most, I think, at least the outlining of the questions has been done really well and is really accessible to someone who's never read philosophy before. But I would recommend Reality Plus by David Chalmers. So that's reality, and then it's like a plus sign.
Reality Plus. I'm jotting this down because I will have a lot of time
I
to read.
I can put it in your chat. I will put it in your chat.
Okay, great.
Reality Plus by David Chalmers. And I suppose I'll put it in my chat too. All right, whatever.
Wow.
There you go.
The Orbeez are getting a lot of love. What can I say? And the Euphranor, maybe not as much.
They're used to it. They understand. Tough love.
It's like a tsundere type situation.
Well, I don't know.
Someone in your chat said crumbs. That's hilarious.
But yes, so Reality Plus is a book written by David Chalmers, who I don't know if I agree with all of his philosophy, but what I will say is I really like that he formulated the hard problem of consciousness into exactly that. He formulated the problem and put it to words that I found were very useful and helpful. But it's essentially like the really difficult problem of qualia or phenomenal consciousness or subjective experience. Like basically how when you stub your toe, you feel pain and you might, let out a curse word or two, right? Like how we can explain the easier problems in that phenomena where, we can explain why it happens maybe, or like how it happens, and like how it benefits our survival and evolution as a species to feel pain or fear, etc., right? But you cannot, or rather it's much more difficult to try to explain, but why do we feel that subjective experience? Like, why is that subjective experience necessary? Why can't my body just know to feel pain without me having to feel the unpleasantness of it all? Maybe is one way to put it. It's a really weird question, but he coined it. So he coined this question, and this is something he deals with. But Reality Plus is a book where he deals more with virtual reality, and he makes the argument that basically, even if we were living in a simulation, we should kind of just behave the way that we do now, because nothing about it being a simulation should change the importance of what we're doing, or like the impact of the things and people we have around us, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at with earlier, which is this idea that regardless of whether we live in a holographic universe, regardless of whether we don't have a free will, there's no way we can really test those theories, and they shouldn't change how we behave.
So I would recommend, maybe reading this book if you are interested in. I don't know if you can. It's like a recent book, so I don't know if you'll be able to find it on the archivals if you don't want to go buy it. But go buy it. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, this is great.
It's a pretty good book.
Reality Plus.
So that's I would say that's a really good introduction, especially for someone who may not be like super into philosophy right away. Like, it's a really good introduction into those philosophical problems to get you in that headspace of thinking about it.
No, this
and
is
then
great.
maybe when you get into it, you'll start to think, oh, okay, I don't know if I like this guy's answer. But regardless, you would have been able to now think of the questions because of the way they're outlined. So overall, recommend. Yes, that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, this is great. Yeah, well, thanks for the book rec. I did want to say, I think we might have time for maybe like one last question. Did you have anything in your regiment?
Well, I did have one very big question. I had a few more questions, but we can definitely.
Well, that just means we got to run this back when I'm back.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. So if you're up for it, we can definitely do more questions. I do have one question that I think would be really interesting to end on, and that is the way I've titled my stream, at least. The question is, why is space not worth it? Or, in other words, is space exploration a waste of money? But, and I know that, this is definitely a question you've dealt with. For sure, this is a question you've dealt with. I was hoping you could start by arguing from the perspective of no, it's not worth it.
Wait, that's such a challenge because I am so convinced that it is. Like,
Yes.
there is no fiber in my body that believes otherwise.
So would you mind, giving it just an attempt to think about why it wouldn't be worth it? Why maybe that it is actually a waste of money, or, basically you have to argue against your own existence. That's kind of what I want to do. And of course, at the end of it, you can obviously trail back to your actual thoughts on this matter. But it's a bit of an exercise that I was hoping you would engage in.
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, I guess I feel like this would probably not be a great answer, because I think I'll just be mirroring what the most common arguments I've heard are. But maybe that's best. Maybe I share with you what the most common arguments I've heard are, and then I sort of explain my real answer to why space exploration is not a waste of money. How does that sound?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I guess the common this makes me very sad, because there have been a few times where not just me, but some colleagues who are incredibly smart and incredibly talented give amazing talks, and then somebody in the audience will say something along the lines of, why are we studying galaxies, or why are we studying stars? Why aren't we curing cancer instead? Why don't we put all of this brain energy into curing things that are on Earth, and fixing things on Earth first before we go out into space and that kind of stuff. That is like the most common thing I've heard, and especially given some of the NASA budget cuts that have been happening, people have become more aware, and in some cases, some people believe that they have become more qualified to speak on this topic. So that's sort of the common, the general.
Uh-oh, audio. I can still hear you on my side. I can hear you on my stream. My audience hears you as well. They're out together. They're
Testing.
out together. No.
Ah, shoot. Sorry. My microphone's been really buggy the past few days. How does that sound,
it's okay,
Orbeez? Give me a thumbs up. All right, I'm back. Okay, well, hopefully I didn't get cut off too much, but I'm now going to explain, like, why I think calling space exploration a waste of money is, like, stupid, because it is not.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people think that the money that goes into space exploration can only just be attributed to, like, the value of a dollar that you hold in your hand. So people think, oh, it's like tax money that's going into, this X mission, and they argue that, that's too much money or something. The reality is that I don't know what the exact, but I think, like, for every tax dollar that you pay in the US, like, the NASA budget is like half a penny or something. It is very low. Like, you could double that and it would even, like, it's just such a minuscule quantity, and people think that it's a lot because you see this on the news. You see, oh, we're going to space, we're launching this, we're launching that. And I'll go into why that's actually a good thing, why people are sharing going into space and why that's exciting. But I think the most common question people say is, oh, why are we spending so much money on NASA? Like, we need to spend more money otherwhere else. I think the question that we should be asking instead is, why is the other 99.65% of the US budget not solving the issues that you think we have in this country? And just for comparison as well, I just heard about this a few weeks ago, which is, I think the NASA budget is like $25 billion right now. If I recall correctly, there was about like $220 billion that was lost or misplaced, and it was only discovered like after an audit by the Pentagon. $25 billion is like 10% of that. So I think what people are saying is, oh, we're spending too much money on space, but I think what we should rather be saying is, why hasn't the other part of the budget fixed the problems that you see in our country?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first part of my answer. The second part is that, well, okay, NASA, space in general, have brought direct positive impacts on your life. I mean, for instance, the second A in NASA stands for aeronautics. NASA has done a ton of useful research in aviation. Actually, just the other day, I read an article about how NASA is potentially making like supersonic planes more of a reality for normal human beings because they're actually banned over public areas because they're so loud. But because of the developments in NASA technology, they've made it a lot easier to, you know, have these planes go over public areas. They've made huge strides in aerospace technology. Every time you ride a plane, aerospace safety, that's NASA. And not only that, but a lot of technologies have also been spun out of space technology. Like, for instance, UV sunglasses, cameras, vacuum cleaners, baby formulas, GPS, you know, even Starlink Wi-Fi, airplanes, laptops, everything is developed by NASA. And actually, every so often, NASA publishes technologies that have spun out of NASA that have brought direct human impacts. It's called like NASA spinoff or something like that. And one really cool example is like the heating in your bed. That was at one point a NASA technology. And people genuinely just don't know that this is a thing and that doing science has directly affected people's life. Yeah, this is the, Eggy's like, this is the first time I hear Z this annoyed. Well, because I feel like I have a lot of opinions about this.
Yeah.
And finally, space is a gateway science. And what I mean by that is people think that space takes up a large part of our budget because they see it in the news all the time. They see these SpaceX launches. They see NASA launching a satellite. They see photos from the James Webb Space Telescope. But that, in a way, is making people excited about space. And it's also getting people to use a scientific method inadvertently. They see a photo of the first galaxies in the universe and they're thinking, what's out there? What is that? Why is that so red? Why is that so blue? That is inadvertently having people use a scientific process, whether they like it or not. And that also leads people to find their true passions, to find directions in science, which is why I think public stargazing nights are also so great, because it's having people use the scientific method. So, just to summarize my whole answer, right? First is calling space exploration a waste of money is dumb, because we're spending, the NASA budget is such a tiny portion of what we could spend in general, and the real question should be, why is everything else that we're spending on not solving problems? The second is that NASA's giving really, really good technology that have direct human impacts and have attributed to the existence of us. And finally, space can be a gateway science and can help people discover their true passions and start to use a scientific method and think like a scientist, and even start to test and question science, which is another thing that we talked about today, which is a very important skill. So yeah, sorry for the rant, but I hope that sort of answers the question, because I think it's really important for people to know about this.
That's a wonderful answer. Thank you. That's exactly that was what I was looking for. I knew that you would have felt very strongly about it, and I just wanted to kind of give you the room to give your thoughts on the matter. I absolutely agree. Like, I definitely, trust me, as a philosophy major, I know what it's like to constantly be asked every day, isn't your field, like your whole thing, totally useless and contributes nothing? I'm very familiar with that, so don't worry. I completely resonate with you. I get it. Personally, you know, I think maybe we have it a little harder, just like a little bit, but also, I don't know, you know, why are we fighting against each other when we should really be working together and actually expanding upon the budget that academia and research gets? But you know, to your point, right? I completely understand why, like, science and scientific research is so important in its funding and in its continued research, not just for the research itself, like going to space, right, but also for the adverse good things that can come out of it, like cameras and all of that.
Yeah.
What I want to maybe add on just at the end, right, is that I don't want it to seem too much like we're straw manning an opponent who's giving us like a bad kind of question, as it were, and just totally slam dunking on them. I don't want it to feel too much like that, right? So in the defense of that dumb question, right, that has angered both of us, understandably so, I would say that oftentimes, from what I understand, right, people ask that question, oh, why are we spending our money on this instead of that? It's most likely because they're just not educated. It really is mostly because they don't know what they're talking about. A lot of people don't know what they're talking about. A lot of people are uneducated. A lot of people don't understand, the whole point of science, as it were, even in any term at all, and they've never even thought to give it any thought. People don't really know about, tax budgets and all of that. They don't really understand really everything. They just kind of see one issue, which is maybe that people are dying from cancer, which is a problem, absolutely. And trying to think, oh, why don't we just pull this other plug and plug that into this? Well, because it doesn't work like that. And frankly, when someone asks that question, it is more indicative of that person rather than the validity of that argument itself. But I want to caution and say that ultimately we should try to educate these people. I think so, at least. I think that's really the only way we can truly deal with the question.
Yeah, I think it's maybe less so that people are uneducated, but more that people don't recognize how intertwined science truly can be. For instance, like you mentioned, like cancer research, for instance.
Yeah.
One example that comes to mind is that at the Large Hadron Collider, the particle accelerator, some of that technology that we've been using to blast high energy particles together have also given us the high precision equipment to help remove, do chemotherapy for cancer patients. There's a lot. Science is so cool because there are so many really exciting interdisciplinary connections. People think between, like, obviously, like, coding and space, for instance, but also between different fields that you may think to be completely separate. There's a lot of these exciting connections, and I think that's something to be excited about instead of potentially pitching them, like, against each other, if that makes sense. But
yes, sorry, I was using different words, but I was trying to agree to that point. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I think that's scientific communication is great because I feel like at the end of the day, people just, I mean, there's something just so, like, pure about, like, being excited about stars. Like, I feel like who isn't? Like, who doesn't look up at the night sky and is like, holy smokes, like, I saw a shooting star or something like that. And so I think scientific communication is really important. And yeah, I mean, with technology and even with VTubing, I guess that's maybe more accessible now than it has been before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. That was the last question I had prepared for you. Well, the last one I wanted to end on. It wasn't all the questions, but maybe we can get to it some other time. Thank you for joining me today. See.
Well, thank you for making this happen. And obviously, like, when I come back from my hiatus, like, we could totally run this back. I guess I did want to sort of end the note by saying, like, I know that there were some comments in the chat, and that typically people don't hear me talk about this concept. I typically try to stay away from, like, politics on my channel. But I think the question that you asked was something that has been posed many, many times by different people and is a question that I'd always be happy to answer. So, yeah.
And I hope they'll never ask you that question again.
I'll just pull up my VTuber
If they do, just
clip.
refer to this part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. But yeah, thank you so much, Z. Anything else? Any last minute plug or announcement you want to make before we
let me quickly see. Oh yeah, I guess one last thing is that tomorrow at 10 a.m. PST, I'm going to be on Tiny Toxic Tofu's channel on Twitch. She has interviewed other science VTubers and other science streamers before, and we're going to be talking about physics because we're both physics educators. So feel free to hop on that. It will be another morning stream, so if you're here, you'll obviously be available for that. And yeah, and then after that, my next stream will be Wednesday, and then I'm gone after Friday. So I'm really glad I was able to collab with you, Charis. And yeah.
Thank you. I have nothing to plug except the fact that I'm streaming, like, I'm reading more Nick Bostrom on my channel tomorrow, so that's all we're doing.
Yippee.
That's it. It's kind of boring, so go watch the other things.
No! Well, actually, I pinned your POV in my chat, so go subscribe to Charis if you haven't already. And yeah.
Great. Or don't. If you don't want to, don't do it. Don't do it if you don't want to. Don't subscribe if you don't want to subscribe and you feel compelled. Only do it if you really want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's all. That's
Tsundere
it.
behavior.
Well, I just well, okay. Well, it looks like it's time to end the stream now. You know, I've got places to be. No, but thank you so much, Z. Thank you for joining me, and thank you, Orbeez, and thank you, I guess, Euphranor as well for being with me. It's weird because I don't usually call them by their name. I kind of just say like you guys. But
y'all,
you guys get special. Y'all get special treatment for today because it's a collab stream. All right, and then it's back to regularly scheduled. Me ignoring you guys. All right, thank you, Z. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you so much, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you, Euphanoria, and thank you, Morning Orbeez, for joining me.
Thank you, and goodbye, everyone.
Bye bye. Bye bye.